I'm Matthew Engelke. Height, I'm 5'10", and I currently am sitting at about 196, 197 pounds.
Okay. And tell us your background. You haven't competed in a while, but you've done a lot of fitness modeling and stuff like that?
Yeah, I do a lot of fitness modeling. I've, done a few book covers here and there, and I do some apparel stuff and a few other commercial things. Mostly for the last few years, I've just been focusing on fitness modeling. But I just started, as of a few days ago, bulking up, and I'm getting ready to give another go at competing, either in physique or classic physique this coming year. I'm looking at other states, so I'm looking at Ohio, Indiana, surrounding states in terms of where I want to start the process. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and tell us what you trained today. Take us through the workout and what you like about it.
Sure, I'm going to bring my workout up. Actually, I've got it nice and organized now, so I'm happy about that. Today I trained shoulders and triceps, and the main focus was actually my deltoids, my shoulders. And I tend to keep the focus for my shoulders more towards the lateral head. However, I did still work the overall shoulder, and I did still work my triceps. But as I've mentioned in previous videos, my triceps and biceps tend to grow fairly well. They're very responsive, so I don't need to do, by way of intensity, hardly any, and they'll just grow and they look great. So I'm mostly, with my triceps, I'm focusing on keeping my range of motion good, keeping the tendons and ligaments moving so that I get that blood flow and increase the my stability and my stabilizer muscles, and mostly preventative measures for just staying away from injury. But so starting off with my shoulders, though, before I did anything with my shoulders, while we're talking about preventing injury, I did some rope tricep extensions on a machine. And the reason I was doing that wasn't so much to really do anything much for my triceps. It was more so to warm up my elbows and my tendons and my ligaments around my elbows that are connected to my triceps. They just, if I don't start warming them up really well before I go into any sort of serious push, I get this clicking sound in my elbows, and so I've been working through that lately. But the first real exercise I did was seated dumbbell shoulder press. And with this one, you'll notice I go pretty slow, fairly concentrated, and I don't have to go terribly heavy in the weight. This is one of those situations where we can ego lift, we can push weight all day long, but you can get a pretty good, you can get a good pump and a pretty good growth out of concentrating, dropping the weight a little bit, but really focusing on form and slowing down your repetitions, and still get a good pump from that. Moving on from the seated dumbbell shoulder press, I went into my dumbbell lateral raises, standing, and I did two warm-up sets with that, and two working sets, and on my last working set, I did a burnout. I got 8 reps with the 40 pounds, and then I dropped down. I tried to do 8 reps all the way down, but I just didn't have it in me on that next set. So I did, I think, 8 reps, then 6 reps, then 8, all the way down to where I was just using my hands, and it was all I could do just to finish lifting my hands. And I supersetted that with using my bands for front lateral raise, which was good because the next exercise I was doing was actually going to be front lateral raise. So I moved into theirs to put a little more, focus on increasing the strength and size in my front deltoids, and I did 4 actual sets, but 2 working sets with my dumbbell front raise. Yeah, and let's see here. Yeah, I did 20, then 12, 10, and 8. That's a pretty typical rep range for me. It's your typical bodybuilding rep range is 8 to 12 repetitions. After dumbbell front raise, I did cable crossover for my deltoids, and this is one of the ones I really like for shaping the deltoids, especially, again, that medial head, like I said, where I wanted to keep the focus. That's, it's more on that medial, the middle, so that's where you really start to get that push outward, and really helps with keeping that that V taper that you want, for competition reasons. And then two, doing the cables, because it's at an angle where I'm pulling out to the side, that puts more size on the outside of the deltoid, and there's less emphasis on your traps. It's harder for your traps to take over and do any sort of work when we start talking about doing cable crossovers, pulling out to the side. Whereas with your side lateral raises, it's pretty easy to try to cheat and use those traps to really muscle and work, then cheat and get that weight up. After that, I supersetted 2 exercises to focus more on my rear delts. I did it. Well, I wanted to do a face pull, but I did more of a modified standing upright row with the rope, and then I supersetted that with seated low row with a wide snatch grip. Now, going wide with a snatch grip, that's going to keep more of the emphasis on my deltoid and less so on my back muscles, especially when I'm supersetting with that first exercise where I'm pulling the weight up and it's really focusing on the medial and rear deltoid. Ooh, move the mic. Is focusing on the medial and rear deltoids. So although typically a row is something that you would use for your back, having already pre-exhausted those deltoids, that's what limits the exercise. I'm not going to feel much of a burn in my back muscles. So, and at that point, again, this is my first time doing this routine because I just put it together over the last few days. I didn't have a lot of gas left in the tank, but didn't really think about that. I moved on to triceps, and I did the incline dumbbell bench press, and I did this more with a concentration, slow. I did it one arm at a time. I'd press them up, and then you see I'd alternate. This is one of those where I'm not really going for heavy weight or really looking to really push the intensity so much as just keeping the movement good and working on my stabilizers, because my triceps are going to grow with any kind of work I put into them. So I may as well make it quality work in terms of stabilizer muscles and building up the strength so that I prevent injury in other exercises. One of the things that's great about doing this is it's going to make me stronger with my flat bench barbell bench press, which, just because of who I am, and I guess most guys probably, it's one of my favorite lifts. So I'm always, anything I can do to make that bench press better, I'm going to do it.
And the benefit for you, bud, why do you like the individual more control as opposed to doing this?
More control. Well, two when you're alternating, when you have one up and one coming down, that increases the instability of the exercise. So the idea is less stability but with control. So it's an unstable environment but with control. And that's one of those where you can, doing exercises where you have decreased stability but still have control, it gives you an opportunity to increase your power. You have to slow down and you have to use lower weight, but it helps aid in your other compound lifts when you're looking for that extra power. So that's the main reason that I did that, was just to increase the instability. Now then I went on to my skull crushers. Normally what I would do is I'd do cable tricep extension with the rope, but since I'd already started off with that, I kind of felt as though the outside of my tricep had already kind of gotten a pretty good warm up. So went straight into skull crushers, and that's another one where I like to slow it down and really control the movement. The last few years, because of how I've been aging and how my joints have been developing, the skull crusher is one that requires a little more concentration, a little more focus to keep from injuring myself. So, it's not one I want to skip because it's a really good exercise and it's great for shaping, but at the same time, there's a high potential for injury, so I'm trying to avoid that. After I really put some power through my triceps, I finished off doing actually 7 sets of 8 to 12 repetitions for my dips. I did that on the assist because without an assist, I don't think that I can do, let's see, that was a total of like 84 repetitions. I can't do 84 repetitions of my own body weight on a dip. That's just a little bit much, especially since now I'm sitting at close to 200 pounds. Moving to anything that's 200 pounds 84 times, regardless of the exercise, you're going to feel it. So like I said, I use the assist there. And what I'm focusing on with my dips is it's another one where I'm really slow and controlled, and I'm squeezing everything I'm focusing on keeping my form good and keeping the tension where I want it, which is in my triceps and in my lower pecs. I also focus on really getting good stretch and going deep with my dips, so that my triceps, that those tendons and those ligaments that are wrapping around my elbow, I want them to get a good workout without too much strain. Tendons and ligaments don't tend to grow and adapt at the speed of your muscles. So for me, it's very important that I work in tendon work, and doing sets of like 7 sets where my repetitions are 8 to 12, and it's with no more than 30 seconds between sets. That keeps you get less of a pump, but it keeps the blood moving, and it keeps the tendons and ligaments being stretched, and that stretch is good for them. It creates a degree of the right amount of small damage in the right places, which encourages blood flow and recovery.
I noticed with those, you really had once you got going, a certain rhythm. You seem to really just start knocking them out.
That's probably closer to like set 4, 5, 6, and 7. Yeah, that's after I've already got a pretty good, once I feel really good about my form and really good with where my movement is, and I'm not hearing any clicking or popping in anything, then I feel more comfortable with starting to get a good rhythm and pushing and building up a little bit of speed. But so much of exercise, especially when we're talking about competition and whatnot, it's preventing injury, and so trying to pick up the speed and intensity before you nail form, and you're 100% sure that you're not injuring yourself, you set yourself up for an injury, and now you're out for how many weeks or months, and when this is a sport that's measured in weeks, you can't, sometimes in days, you can't take months off.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's your diet like now? That was your full workout, right? The last one?
I'm sorry?
Dips were the last one.
Dips were the last exercise I did for today. Moving on to diet, like I said, I just started. I'm just now focusing on bulking and shaping and putting size on for competing this next year. So I just did a very hard cut. I started off my cut at about 210 pounds, and then for about 8 to 10 weeks, I wasn't exercising a lot, and I was mostly focusing on just cutting calories out of my diet. I had some injuries I needed to recover from, some tendinitises, some osises, and so on and so forth. And when you're only exercising 2 or 3 times a week, as with cutting usually goes, the primary focus is on your diet. So it's been a very, very clean diet these last few weeks. With very few exceptions, everything I eat, I measured out, I ran the macros, I know exactly what's going in and what's coming out. I'm averaging about 200 grams of protein a day. While I was cutting, I think I was at only maybe 250 grams of carbs a day, and my fats were probably below 60 grams a day. So I have no aversion to carbs when I'm cutting. For me, it's just total. I'm not sensitive to carbs, so it's total calories in, total calories out. If I'm burning more calories than I'm taking in, I'm losing weight. It doesn't matter if it's fats or carbs, because sure, I can cut my carbs down, and that first 2 weeks I'm going to lose a whole bunch of water weight, but I also know it's only water weight, so it doesn't matter that much to me. Like I said, so I keep my focus more on just make sure my macros are right, make sure I'm in a deficit, and I'm going to lose weight. And so I cut down from about 210 to about 190 pounds. And starting just the last 3 days, really, I've just started putting it back in. I joke, I say today my look was a little bit soggy. And you might look at me and you're like, there's nothing soggy about that look. But if you had seen me 5 days ago, you would say, oh, well, yeah, you're pretty soggy today. When you go from being able to count individual striations all the way down the side of your body to, okay, well, there's only 4 obliques peeking out today. You can measure it. I'm probably a little bit overly obsessive with it. But yeah, so since I'm bulking up again, the way I switched my diet up mostly, I'm still eating fairly clean. The main way I'm just getting those extra calories in is I drastically increased my carb intake. So now I'm about 500 grams of carbs a day, but really where I'm getting the bulk of my extra calories is from fats. I'm between 100 and 120 grams of fats in a day, and I've been really happy with that. For obvious reasons, fat just tastes delicious.
How many meals a day do you have?
So true meals, I still stick to 3 true meals a day, but that's not counting the meal that I have at 3 in the morning. It's not a full sit-down meal, but it's going to have a protein, usually eggs, because that's just what it's fastest in the middle of the night. That or a protein shake, and I'm going to have a vegetable, and I'm going to have a potato or something before I go back to bed. So I also have a few of those types of meals sprinkled out throughout the day. So I do a pretty big breakfast. Then I have a protein. Then 2 or 3 hours later, a protein shake and some carbohydrates. Usually, again, it's just easy to grab a potato, throw it in the microwave, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever. Now I've got a baked potato to pair with my protein. So and then I have lunch. Then 2 hours later, it's usually my post-workout shake plus some food, then dinner. So lately, actually, though, I've been taking some advice from some dietitians, sports dietitians. One specifically, she works with the Red Wings, the Detroit Red Wings, and she has opened me up to some more nutraceuticals, which would be essentially, it's like drugs that you get that are naturally occurring from your foods. So certain foods are going to have compounds in them that function sometimes better than over-the-counter, even prescription drugs. In this particular instance, what I'm talking about is I've been using tart cherry juice in the morning and in the evening. A lot of antioxidants, but then on top of it, that natural melatonin is good for growth hormone release, and it's also good for just trying to go to sleep in the evening. Anytime you can help increase your growth hormone output, anytime you can increase your sleep, make your sleep better, now you're looking at better recovery, better growth, and now I'm stronger for the next day. So those. Yep. Yeah. So, and that's just one example. That's just the tart cherry juice. I've also been really into a few different mushrooms that are really nice. Lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and the idea there being that research suggests that it's going to increase both focus and then also oxygen delivery to the tissues. So those two things really drastically can help my performance in and outside of the gym. Really, the increase in oxygen to the tissues it's obvious. You have more oxygen going to your tissues, you have greater strength, you have greater endurance, you get more out of your workout. And when you continue that after your workout, now you're having increased recovery time. Those are some ones that I really like. I've also been really happy using a lot of cacao or cocoa, whatever you want to call it, because athletes tend to be lower in magnesium, zinc. Magnesium and zinc tend to be pretty, those tend to be what athletes are hungry for, especially in this country. And magnesium, you can get a pretty good amount from avocados, but then the cacao, which is where I'm getting a lot of it. And then also the cacao has been shown to be good for maintaining a positive nitrogen balance. Anytime you have a positive nitrogen balance, your body, it promotes muscle growth and promotes the breakdown of fat. So it's a win-win, growth and fat loss at the same time.
Can't beat that.
Yeah.
How about cardio, bud? On a normal, obviously you're not prepping for it showing up, but on a normal day, do you do cardio? Or?
I've been I have incorporated not so much cardio. I've been doing a lot more HIIT. I've been focusing on increasing my VO2 max. We were just talking about using food to increase oxygen delivery to the tissues, but they're exercising, using high-intensity interval training. I can increase my VO2 max, which is basically the potential for my body to deliver oxygen to my tissues. We all have a genetic predisposition to be a particular way with our oxygen delivery. So anytime you can train to increase your VO2 max, now when you actually do that, now you're increasing your ability to do pretty much everything else. Sure, VO2 max, primarily you're going to see benefits when you're talking about endurance. But there's a degree of endurance incorporated when you start going with reps, rep range above, say, 8. and everybody's different. So like again, any little thing that I can get to get more intensity out of my workout, I'm all about it. But now that I'm true bulking, I don't have cardio or HIIT planned into my routine, into my split. But after my first 6 weeks of bulking, depending on how the weight gain goes, I want to start incorporating it back because cardio is just good.
So when you're bulking, how do you decide how much you're going to, like, what weight area you're trying to hit? Basically, what's your goal like that?
Yeah, so when you say what area I'm trying to hit, you mean where I'm trying to put the weight?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Like, what are you? Because I know it's hard when you bulk. You can't say, okay, I've gained this much stage weight. So will you just, do you have a weight you want to meet, and then you'll test your body fat to see where you're at?
Yes, I every week I keep a close eye on my body fat. Another thing too is because the way my diet is and how many years I've been doing this, I roughly know what to expect, what's realistic gains. So I can keep an eye on my weight. So I'll take my weight to a minimum of 2 times a day, but on average about 2 to 4 times a day, and I will record that and I run an average and I look at my charts. So if I find that if I'm putting on, more than about 0.6 pounds per day, and it's less at the beginning and more towards the middle, but roughly 0.6 pounds a day by the end of, say, a 12-week bulk, I know that I'm going to have a minimal amount of fat gain from that. And 2, I also keep an eye on it in the mirror because weight, what the scale says is a small portion of what actually is happening. What you need to see, where is it going? Okay, is this dense muscle? Is this water weight? Is this fat? So you can't really know for sure when you're just bulking, but I try to do a clean bulk, and I know that when I start seeing, if I step on the scale and say, oh, holy crap, I'm a whole 6-7 pounds heavier this week than I was 8 days ago. Well, I know that there's at least half that's got to be fat. I'm not putting on 7 pounds of muscle in a week. There's no way that's going to happen.
Say that kind of stuff.
There's no way that's going to happen realistically.
No.
So, yeah.
So it was interesting when you were talking about. I hear a lot of guys talk about this. And so you said you naturally your arms, your biceps, and triceps naturally seem to grow quickly. So you don't overtrain them because you want to keep your body aesthetic, correct? And and I've ran into so many people. They want to have that one body part that's just like genetically freakish and blah blah blah.
Well, that's fine, but they won't. I mean, I'm looking at competing. I totally get that. I've been in this situation. I've had situations in my life where I didn't the aesthetics portion of it, or how I wanted to look, or needed to look to score on stage. That never mattered to me. So I would focus on those body parts, and they would get freakish. And I probably bicep and deltoids were probably the biggest ones when I was younger. That I thought, yeah, they just look good. Let's just keep throwing it on. Then you start looking strange. When you're I had a situation where my bicep measurement at a pump, I think I was getting close to 20 inches, which isn't that big, but it was big enough for me to where, with a chest that was I think like 38 or 40. Okay. That size bicep with that small of a chest doesn't look right. You look you'd see me from the side and you'd think, okay, well, your arm's bigger around than your waist is. It only from the side that it looked that way. Obviously it wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't need to look like that. I'm not going to win anything doing that.
Well, you'd be surprised how many people who do compete, and that's the thing. People don't realize that. I guess that if you're looking for an overall look, and you don't want to just have huge arms, or some guys it's legs or calves.
Right.
You want to have a balanced look. I find that interesting. Most people don't realize that.
2, I also try to crowdsource when it comes to what I'm going to decide, what I'm going to train, and how I'm going to, where my focus is going to be in terms of growth. You were saying that we were talking about people just having these freakish whatever. And I know that what I see in the mirror isn't reality. I know that there's some portions of me I'm going to exaggerate in my head or minimize in my head. So, I'll talk to other people that are in the industry, and I try to get unbiased, opinions. Okay, well, where do you think, if you were to say that if you had to pick only 2 spots on me that you didn't think fit the frame for this class of competition, what would those 2 spots be? And usually people tend to be pretty honest with me about it. people, I find that some people, when they have an opportunity to cut me down, they jump right on it. So, okay, all right. Yeah. Anything we can do to make this ripped guy feel bad for just a few seconds.
Anyone you'd like to thank for that?
Yeah, I'll thank my girlfriend Lily. She's been very supportive of me. Thank my mother. She's also been very supportive of me. And my father, of course. Lately, my father's been overwhelming with support. In fact, he's convinced me, and I'm going to give it a shot. Next year, I'm going to try to compete in the traditional Scottish Highland games, too. I'm looking at the hammer toss. And my father's so supportive, he had a custom kilt made for me from scratch in Scotland. Like, it's my family tartan. It's made specifically for competing, and the thing is thick. Your typical formal kilt weighs about 8 pounds. This thing's closer to 16 pounds. So, and he even made sure that it was the right design, the right cut, everything. So, like I said, the last few months, the support that I've been getting from my family has really started to kick it up a whole new notch. So.
I don't film and work with strongman before, but you have to compete in all games. You can pick one aspect.
You can just pick the ones that you can compete in. I would not be eligible to compete if you had to compete in all games. There's one event, the one I had my eye on that I was hoping I could do, called the caber toss, and it's essentially, if I were to describe it to somebody that's never seen it before, it's basically you have to throw. I'm not exaggerating. You're throwing a telephone pole. And the telephone pole has to flip over end over end. So 360-degree rotation to do it right. And when I say it's essentially a telephone pole, if you ever type in caber toss and just watch some videos, you'll realize I'm not exaggerating. The thing is probably 20, 25 feet tall, pretty big around. I really wanted to compete in that. However, your starting deadlift weight has to be 700 pounds. That's your starting deadlift. So the amateurs that never place and never go anywhere and can't even do a proper caber toss start off deadlifting 700 pounds. So that's not me. I was reading the description of the prime athlete for caber toss. They said the ideal athlete is 6'4", 350 pounds, and has a comfortable deadlift of about 850 pounds. A comfortable deadlift. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, when I start warming up with 800 pounds, then we'll talk. Yeah.
Okay. That's insane.
It's a little bit much. Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for the workout, bud. It was great. We'll be catching up with you again here soon and go over legs. So.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.